No bacon? Ah! Well, 74 points? I can't eat the rest of the week!
Hey, well, welcome to Real Life. Well, welcome everybody here. Welcome to Canyon Church for those of you watching there. Welcome to Discovery Church for those of you watching there. And for everybody watching our online campus, welcome to you. We're so glad that you're joining us as we continue this series. It is the new year. We're all thinking about getting healthy in some kind of way. Whether you did New Year's resolutions or not, you probably have some idea of, I want to do this better. And maybe you started some kind of diet. Maybe you started something you want to cut out. Some of you said, I'm going to get rid of sugar, at least for the first few weeks of the year. Maybe it's alcohol. Maybe it's caffeine. For me, I chose to give up celery. For 2020, I'm not doing celery, just like I didn't do in 2019. So that's what I'm doing. So join me in the celery fast. But whatever it is, maybe you came up with something, maybe you didn't. But I know that all of us are thinking about making our lives a little bit better in 2020. And one of the areas in which a lot of us want to focus on is the issue with our money. And we're about to get a big reminder of that here in about a week when we get that special envelope in the mail from our friends over at Discover and MasterCard and wherever else you choose to get your credit from. And they're going to remind us that we owe them a lot of money based on last month and maybe last year. And so maybe you're going to think about, I want to go on some kind of debt diet to pay off the credit card from the Christmas of 2019 or 2018 or 2012, or go back as far as you want, but you're still paying on things that you ate years ago, and it's time to finally pay it off. And so what if we all went on a debt diet? So I thought what we'd do is, first of all, I thought I'd just come up with a few in the spirit of Jeff Foxworthy, instead of you might be a redneck, but rather you might be in need of a debt diet, okay? So here's the first one. You've sold so much plasma, your picture is on the wall. Okay? If that's you, think about that. You walk in, they say, Norm, that kind of. If you've ever considered selling a kidney, okay? Don't do that. Okay, if MasterCard sent you a Christmas card this year from their staff, said thank you, then you probably need a debt diet. So we're all going to go on this together. And some of you are like, I got a ton of debt, I need the help. And some of you are like, I don't have much debt, I can manage it. Some of you are like, I don't have any debt, I'm doing good. But here's the reality of where we live. LendingTree.com came out and said we did a survey on all of California. We're massively in debt, not just the state, not just the government, but based on our state as individuals. And Santa Clarita ranked number 2 per person amount of debt. And they weren't even counting our mortgages. They're just talking about like credit card loans or credit cards and auto loans and student loans and leases and all that kind of stuff. Number 2 in the state. So we got to do something about this. So we're going to go on a debt diet as a church family, and I'm inviting you to join us. Whether or not you consider this your church home, whether or not you even believe in God, yet I know you believe in debt, and so we're going to try to figure out how to get rid of this. Because wouldn't it be nice, even though your parents had debt and their parents had debt, and it's kind of been passed down to you, what if you broke the cycle? What if you got rid of debt? And what if you taught your kids to not have debt? What if you literally changed your family tree? You could do that through this journey. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to start groups at the end of this month, and we're inviting everybody to join a group. If you're at the Real Life campus, they're going to meet on Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night right here in the building. If you're at the Canyon Church campus, you're going to meet at your school on Sunday afternoon. If you're at the Discovery Church campus, you have multiple options there as well. And we want to get everybody in our churches through this 9-week program called Financial Peace University. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you more about it. Now, you might be thinking, and this might have been your thought last week if you were with us. And if you missed last week, make sure you catch up online or listen to it when you're on the treadmill or whatever. But you might be thinking, okay, that's fine, but what does the church have to do with this? Yeah, I've got debt. Yeah, I got stuff I got to pay off. Yeah, I got money I got to manage. But what does the church have to do with this? I mean, the church should stay out of this, right? I mean, separation of church and state, separation of church and wallet. That's kind of the way we think, right? And we think that until we don't have anything in the wallet, and then we go to the church begging God to give me something in the wallet, right? God, please bless my finances until I get it, and then you stay away from it. That's kind of the way we think. And so what does the church have to do with this? Well, I know the assumption is that the church only wants your money, but this series is really more about telling you how to get more money, how to manage God's money, and how to accumulate wealth so that you can be generous towards other people and stay out of debt. And here's why we feel like this is important for us to talk about. Did you know that Jesus talked about money more than any other subject? He talked about it 2 times as much as heaven and hell combined. He talked about it 5 times as much as prayer. He talked about it in 16 of his 38 parables that he told, which were just simply stories about how to live. And while there's also 500 verses in the New Testament, the second half of the Bible, which is the biographies of Jesus and the letters that the first church wrote to each other, there's 500 verses in there that deal with prayer and with faith, but there's over 2,000 verses that deal with money and possessions. Now, why is this such a big deal in the Bible? Are they trying to fund something? They got a capital campaign? What's happening? It's everything that has to do with what Jesus said. Look at what Jesus said about our money. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be also. Jesus knew that the chief competitor for our hearts was not Satan, was not witchcraft, but it was money. Because you know as well as I do, wherever your money goes, that's where your heart goes as well. And Jesus says, if you want to get your heart right, get your money right as well. So that's the journey we're going to take over these next couple of weeks. And I want everybody to not only join us on the weekend, but also join us in one of these groups. And I know some of you are apprehensive about that, and I'm going to do my best to convince you why you got to do this. My wife and I have been through Financial Peace University. We're going through it again because we see the value in it. And regardless of wherever you are with your finances, this is so important. So here's kind of what I want to talk about next. Anybody in here in college, or maybe you're a journalism major, or maybe you are an English teacher, you deal with the written language at any point, okay? You probably know very well what a simile is. And for the rest of us, that's when you use the word like, okay? But it's bigger than that. But a simile is something that that is taught in college, obviously. Well, I came across this. I thought this was hilarious. These are actual college student attempts at using a simile. Actual college students, okay? Here's the first one. The little boat gently drifted across the pond exactly the way a bowling ball wouldn't. Okay? That's pretty good, isn't it? Very clever. Here's another one. Her hair glistened in the rain like nose hair after a sneeze. Actual college students, friends, okay? USC. Anyway, next one. John and Mary never met. They were like 2 hummingbirds who had also never met. Okay? It's brilliant, right? Okay. Last one. Debt crashed down upon them and buried them like an avalanche on a cold, dark mountain. Now, I wrote that one. And not in college, but just recently. Don't applaud for that. That's terrible, okay? And here's why I wrote that. Because that is what it feels like, right? And I've been there, and maybe you've been there, and maybe you are there. This feeling of being overwhelmed. Your heart starts to beat faster. If you start thinking about money or talking about money, you get stressed out. There's sleepless nights. There's arguments with your spouse. And you don't know how you're going to make it. In fact, the latest stats show in the past year, our country has taken on more debt. Total consumer debt totaled $3.9 trillion, a 7.6% increase from the previous year. Credit card debt broke the previous record of $1.2 trillion that was set in 2008. Student loans totaled $1.5 trillion last year. Auto loans totaled $1.1 trillion. And it's easy to see when you carry this with you how that can begin to weigh you down in your life. So we know some of the statistics, with the country. We thought it'd be interesting to get a glimpse of what it's like right here in LA County. And so what we did was we gave you a piece of candy on the way in. okay? And this is completely random. There's no profiling going on, no stereotypes or anything like that. It was completely random, but you were given a piece of candy. Some of you already ate that, and that's, no judgment here, but let's go back to our New Year's resolutions. Some of you, you kept it, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to call out your candy bar, and if that's you, I'm going to ask you just to stand up wherever you are, and you're going to represent a segment of our population, okay? So here we go. If you got a payday candy bar, just stand up wherever you are, okay? If you're inside, outside, watching online, you're on your own, okay? You represent the 11% that have a fully funded long-term emergency fund and are confident and excited about your financial future. Congratulations, everybody. Yeah. You may not have known that coming in, but you know what? Pays to come to church. Okay, have a seat. All right, if you got the Nestle Crunch Bar, would you stand up? Okay, you're living under the crunch. You represent the 59% of us who don't have a financial safety net and really have no plans for creating one. You are financially apathetic. No applause for you. Okay, go ahead and have a seat. Okay, if you got the 100 grand bar, which is by far the best candy bar, go ahead and stand up. Oh, there, own it. There you go. Okay, you're representing 26% of us who are literally living payday to payday, dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety. Oh, God bless you. All right, have a seat. And then finally, if you got the milk duds, would you stand up? There's very few of you. Okay, you represent the 4% of those in your area who have lots and lots of unpaid and overdue bills piling up, and you're embarrassed and overwhelmed. Aren't you glad you stood up? All right. Hey, thank you for playing along. Now that we're all just completely miserable, eat your candy bar. You'll feel better, okay? Now, here's the reality for every single one of us. Whether that lined up with where you are or you're totally out of the typecast of it, you know the pressure that money can play on your life. And can I just tell you, no one is beyond the kind of help that only God can give. I can tell you that from personal experience. I grew up in a home with two parents who did not have finances modeled well for them. And then they came into their marriage without a lot of knowledge about finances. My dad, though being a great guy and a really hard worker, he loved to spend, which scared my mom to death, which caused lots of fights. And then we'd go to a church that didn't teach us anything about money, it just asked for money. And so as a result, we didn't really talk about good financial principles in my home growing up. And then when I got out of that home, I took with it my own kind of, character defects and flaws with my poor knowledge of money, and we got ourselves into all kinds of trouble sometimes. And I can just tell you that I'm excited about this series because I know the pain of what debt can do to you. And I know the pain that a lot of us are feeling right now. And I'm excited about this series because it's going to help every single one of us learn how to manage God's resources better, rather than just trying to figure this out on our own. And I'm also excited about this because you know that the way that we spend our money is a whole lot more than just managing ones and zeros and pieces of paper. It has something to do with our character. And the way that we spend or the way that we save or the way that we hoard has everything to do with something that lies beneath. And I'm confident that this series and the 9 weeks of Financial Peace University are going to unearth that character defect and begin to bring healing there. And I think we owe it to ourselves to begin to figure this out and let God begin to heal us from the inside out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about it in here, and then I'm going to ask you to sign up for an FPU group. It's going to meet weekly, 9 weeks on campus. If you're already in a community group, you just do this in your community group. That's perfectly fine. And you can just sign up right there on the app. Now, for those of you that are freaking out about this, thinking, I don't want to go to somebody's home, you don't have to. You can come to the campus. For those of you that think that you have to show up and show your W-2 and your credit card bill and, tell your worst sin from junior high, you're not going to have to do any of that. We're going to talk about money principles. We're going to watch a video. We're going to learn some teachings. And you get to go home and you get to talk about this together. But the truth is, you're already going to argue about money. Why not have someone to blame? Blame us. And we'll give you the principle, and you can blame us for it and say, well, they said we got to do it, and I think you're going to find financial healing. So today, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you one of Jesus' most famous stories, a story that maybe you've heard before, even if you've never been to church before. It's called the story of the prodigal son. But this story is so great because it really deals with how God sees us and welcomes us home despite whatever it is that we've done. But what I want you to look at are the steps that this prodigal son goes through to run away. And it's so similar to the choices that we make when we get into financial debt and destruction in our lives. And so I'm going to give you 5 critical mistakes that this kid makes. And I want you to see if you've ever done any of these when it comes to your finances. So we're going to take a look at the story first. This is what Jesus tells in a crowd full of people. He says, a man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. That's a little bit like saying to your dad, hurry up and die. I want the life insurance. His father agreed. Now, everybody, right then, when Jesus says that, I bet everybody went, because that was unheard of back then. It's unheard of now. His father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, this younger son packed up all his belongings and moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, boy, it just keeps getting worse. A great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. Now catch it, this is a Jewish boy. Okay? Imagine what the audience is thinking. Oh, it's even worse. He's got to go work with pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him. He's willing to eat the pig's food, but the people he's working with, they won't let him have anything. That's a pretty bad demise. I want to tell you 5 critical mistakes he makes, which are so similar to the way we find ourselves getting into trouble when it comes to finances. I want you to keep track. How many of these 5 are you currently dealing with? Here's the first one. Longing for the land of Here's what that means. We all want to be pretty-er, strong-er, rich-er, happy-er, smart-er. It's not enough to just be us because we have this longing for more. And after we live in the land of for a little bit, we begin to look across the horizon and we see the Isle of Est. Now I want to be smart-est, rich-est, retweeted est, on and on it goes. And can I tell you, I've been there. And if I'm not careful, I drift back there, where I start looking over the fence at everybody else. And now because of social media, we get to look at everybody's perfect lives and see what we are not. And we're constantly saying, boy, I wish I was like them. I wish I looked like them. I wish I, could do what they're doing. And I've lived that before. I wish I could preach like that guy. I wish I could, write like that guy. I wish I was ripped like that guy. I wish I had that house that person has or the car that person has. Let me just tell you, the comparison trap is just that, a trap. And in this story, Jesus tells us what this prodigal son is beginning to stir with. I want to go there, and I don't want to be here. He's ungrateful for what he has. He wants more. He runs to the land of That's what got him into trouble. And friends, that's what gets us into trouble. We look at our car and we think, no, we need to have a better car. We look at our house and we think, no, we have a better house. Now, there was this guy that was the third king of Israel. His name is Solomon, and we often refer to the wisdom of Solomon, and that's because he was the wisest man to ever live outside of Jesus. And by today's measure of the money that he had, he would be considered a true trillionaire. And he has incredible wisdom when it comes to money. And I'm going to sprinkle a lot of his teachings all throughout our time together today. Take a look at what he says. Don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. In other words, I'm there, and I'm telling you, it's not what you think it is. Restrain yourself. Riches disappear in the blink of an eye. Wealth sprouts wings and flies off into the wild blue yonder. I mean, isn't that true? And we've had some stocks that have done that before. We've had some investments do that before, right? He continues on. Look what he writes in this passage in the book of Ecclesiastes. Then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors. This was written before Instagram. Somehow he already knew this. This is just in us, right? But this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. He's saying, don't journey to a distant land chasing the wind. It will only leave you wanting more. So how are you doing on that one? Here's the second one. Instant gratification. Okay? Because you know as well as I do, it's not enough to have something better. We want to have it right now. And that's what happens to this boy. He can't wait until his dad dies for him to get the money. He says, I want your money now. And I'm not happy here, so I'm going there. I mean, this is pretty much indicated. Every time we go to Amazon and we look for the quickest way we can get something, we do the buy now, we do the one click. If it's not delivered in 2 days, we're freaking out, because we got to have it right now. It's a little bit like a lot of us have felt the pressure of we want to be where our parents were, which took them 25 years to get to, and we want to be there the moment we get married or the moment we get out of college. It's that feeling you have when you go to the car lot and you've got just enough money to buy just an old, beat-up $4,000 car, but you earned that money, you saved that money, and you walk in with that money, and what do? They parade you past the new cars in the showroom. Yeah, I think the used cars are back here. Let's walk through the inside. And so you see all, and you open up the door. Boy, don't ever open up the door because they smell so good, right? They don't smell like French fries and Cheerios, right? You can't even imagine an apple core shoved in the car seat, or goldfish crackers all over the floor. It's pristine. And then they began to talk about it's just this much a month. And there's something about jumping over all the steps that other people had to take so many times to get there and getting what we want now, immediately. Jesus says it this way in Luke chapter 12. Beware. Don't always be wishing for what you don't have, for real life and real living are not related to how rich you are. So how you doing with that one? Instant gratification? Here's the third one. And that is self-destructive behavior. In Jesus' story, this guy's spending gets him into all kinds of trouble. And that's kind of what happens to us, right? We all know that sin costs us something. It costs us our soul, it costs us relationships, and let's be honest, it even costs us money. I mean, this is a place that is filled with broken people, and no perfect people are allowed. Most of us are like the rest of us. We all stand at the foot of the cross on equal ground, right? So we all can say this. We know what it's like to have spent a lot of money on destructive behavior. And maybe you don't even want to think about how much money you have spent to get a fix or a buzz or a high or to medicate a pain. Not to mention the amount of money that has been spent on sex trafficking in this industry, pornography, where it is destroying people's lives, including your own. And I was reading this recently. Did you know the average American spends $1,100 a year on lottery tickets, which is far greater than the amount they spend on charitable giving? I mean, friends, it is a self-destructive behavior. And the prodigal son spent his money on wild living until he found that law of increased appetite but diminished return. Take a look again at what Solomon says. For drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. How are we doing on that one? Here's the fourth one. Spending more than you've got. I've learned something in my few years of living, a lot of years of living. I've learned something very profound I want to pass on to you. 90 days is not the same as cash. Okay? And a layaway program means a lay-awake program, okay? Because you're thinking about it all the time. When you spend more than you make, it bothers you, it creeps into your psyche, and it keeps you up at night. We've all gotten those letters in the mail from well-meaning credit card companies that give us the words we've always been longing to hear. You are pre-approved. I've always wanted to be approved. And now they're telling me I am. I had no idea they knew who I am, but now they've picked me out of a crowd, 1 in a million, and they've said, you are approved. And maybe you've gotten those. And they're just so affirming, right? But the truth is, it only leads us down a destructive path. And when you get on the other side of compounding interest, boy, it is destructive. And that's why Paul writes this to a young guy by the name of Timothy. He says, godliness with contentment is great gain. This word contentment is huge. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we'll be content with that. All right, so let me give you the last one. The last mistake this guy makes. Let's see where you are with this one. Being unprepared for storms. In this story, Jesus talks about this guy who runs off, spends all his money, and then a famine hits, and he's got nothing. No plan, no emergency fund, no backup, no savings. Here again, Solomon says this: a prudent person foresees the danger ahead and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Again, he says it this way. I love this one. Stupid people spend their money as fast as they get it. A wise man saves for the future. Now, this is why our saving is not based on fear or a lack of trust in God. It's simply being prudent with the money that He's given us. We say all the time around here, 10, 10, 80. You give 10, you save 10, you live on 80. It's a great way to work things. And Financial Peace University sets you up with understanding how to set up an emergency fund very, very quickly so that you don't have to worry about when the famine hits. We all forget about things like car repairs and emergency room visits, and medications we suddenly have to get, and surprise trips we have to take. I mean, all of these things kind of add up, and we just don't factor them in. And sometimes that gets us into a lot of trouble. So how are you doing on that? Those 5 things. Some of you, maybe just one of them you struggle with, maybe 2, maybe all 5. What do we do now? The same thing that this boy does. Look how Jesus concludes his story. Finally, he came to his senses. I mean, that phrase right there can sum it all up. He came to his senses. You ever had that kind of moment where a light bulb went off over your head, or you just had this, what am I doing kind of moment? And he said to himself, you know what? Even if I lived at home with the hired servants, they've got food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I'll go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, he embraced him, and he kissed him. Here's your way out. First thing is, you call it what it is. This kid says, you know what? This stinks. I'm living out here with the pigs. This is ridiculous. And you know what the definition of insanity is, right? Doing the same thing, getting the same result, expecting a different result. And finally, he woke up and said, you know what? This is not working for me. And maybe that's what you and I have to do. This process that we're in of spend, it's got to stop. And here's why. Again, Solomon tells us the real pain that we're in. A borrower is slave to the lender. We know what it's like to feel like we are a slave to a lender. The joy that's lost, the weight that hangs over us when we go on family vacations because we don't know how we're going to pay for this. The trauma that you feel over Christmas. Every time your kids open a package, you think, yeah, but the bill's coming. Just call it what it is. This stinks. So I'm going to do something about it. Here's the second thing that he does. He develops a plan of attack. He decides, you know what, I'm going to go home and I'm going to apologize. I'm going to beg my dad to be able to live with the servants. And this is what Solomon says about this idea. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. In other words, the first step you do is you decide, I'm not going to take on any more debt. Let's stick with what we've got and begin to chip away at this and develop a plan. That's the beauty of Financial Peace University. It begins to put a plan together for you to work with your family. And if you're a young adult, can I just tell you, this is such a perfect way to start out your life. I wish I'd known these principles when I was younger and started them then. It would be so much better for me. And I know for many of us in this room, I wish I'd learned this earlier. And this is how Solomon says it. Says, the plans of the diligent are hard work, always pays off. Mere talk puts no bread on the table. Set a plan and start going on it. And that's the third thing, and that is to start immediately. Some of you are thinking right now, financial peace, that sounds interesting. We'll talk about it when we get home, maybe sign up next week or the week after. I don't know, maybe we'll push it off a year. Start immediately. Sign up today. The kid in this story decides, I'm going home now. And again, Solomon warns us about waiting. Look what he says, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a bandit. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to sign up for FPU today. It's right now, this weekend, it is $89. It goes up to $99 on Monday. So sign up right now. And for those of you thinking that's too much money, it's probably because you need Financial Peace University. We will help you and give scholarships to you, but you have got to take the step to do it. For those of you that think, I don't need this, I'm fine, well then what is your plan? For those of you that are out of debt and doing well, we need you to take this so you can help others in that circle, because it may not be the best for you, but it will be for somebody else. We have to do this together, and I'm asking everybody to sign up and do this. Last weekend, hundreds of families around here signed up to do it, but there are still spots left, and I want to encourage you to do that. Over the past 10 years that we've been doing FPU, just kind of as a side class that you can do, 600 families have gone through it. Over the 9 weeks they were in it, not even following, just the 9 weeks they were in it, they paid off almost $1 million of collective debt amongst them. Friends, this works, and it's biblically based. And for those of you thinking, yeah, I don't know, I mean, it's just a money grab, none of this money goes to us. It goes to the materials that you get. If you're a family of 4, you buy 1 packet. It's for everybody. But you got to sign up for it now. Now, here's the last thing. This is huge. This is where we turn a book into something transformational. This is where we turn a workbook or curriculum into something that changes your life, and it's one thing. You got to humbly ask your Father for help. You notice what the Son does here? Let's put that verse up again. He returns home to his father. Look at this. While he was a long distance away, his father saw him coming. You know what Jesus is telling us here? Your Father's waiting for you. He's looking for you. Every day he stands and watches the horizon for you to come running back home. And what does he do? Does he run out there and say, how dare you? I can't believe you humiliated me. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son. He embraced him, and he kissed him. Our Father is a good, good Father. And we come to him with all of our sin, all of our brokenness, and even our debt. And we say, I've messed this up, God. I'm sorry. And he says, I thought you'd never ask. Friends, I'm telling you, when we do that, when we work this together, it's a game changer. Because what I'm noticing is the money is only a symptom. Deep down, there's a character flaw. And maybe for you or for me, it's a pride issue, it's a greed issue, it's an envy issue, it's an insecurity issue. But you know, there's something churning down there that money is just kind of it's just the symptom. It's just the fruit of the poisonous tree. When we start to ask our Heavenly Father for help, he begins to change us from the inside out. And we see total transformation. Like I said, there have been so many people that have journeyed through this around here. I wanted you to hear one single mom's story. Take a look at this.
So my name is Amy, and I'm a single mom of 2 girls, and we have been attending Real Life Church for 5 years. So in 2014, when I moved to Santa Clarita, I had moved here to be closer to family because my husband of 10 years at the time had decided to leave me and our 2 girls. I was going to have to be a single parent for the very first time, and that terrified me because my finances were going to be completely different. As a single parent, I knew our lifestyle was going to change dramatically, and I wanted to learn some tools and create some stability so we could have a fighting chance. So when I first started attending Real Life Church, I started plugging into multiple groups and classes, but I had quickly learned that Real Life Church offered Financial Peace University, and I knew instantly that I had to take that class. Financial Peace University is a 9-week course, and every week will teach you some new tools on how to manage and be a good steward of God's resources. When I started FPU, I actually went in really excited. I was ready to learn some new tools and how to budget and kind of create this new lifestyle. And honestly, in the first couple of weeks, I had gotten really frustrated. When I was learning how to budget, I was putting, all of my income down, and I was putting all the bills that I had to pay day, and I got really sad because I didn't have an extra penny to my name. And so I sat down with the stewardship pastor, and so he kind of walked me through it, and he basically told me, he goes, you're gonna have to find a way to bring in some extra income. And that was really discouraging for me. I had just found a part-time job, and then the idea of having to get a second job just made it that much more difficult. But I stayed the course. The most that I could do was budget every month. I just got really good at it and figuring out where I was gonna put every dollar every month. And then things started to get better, like blessings started to happen little by little. It was actually tax season and I got my refund and I was able to use that to pay off my car. And so for the first time, I had $200 extra to my name. And so I finally had a little breathing room. And then a couple months after that, I had went from part-time to full-time, so some extra money started coming in there. And then about a year later, I was able to pay off my credit card and get a raise. So it really took time to build up that momentum, but I just stayed the course. And as a single mom with one income, I have paid off $27,800, and I am so proud to say that. And I'm projected to be debt-free at the end of 2020. Before I had taken Financial Peace University, just money would come in and it would be spent wherever I figured it would need to be spent. When I took Financial Peace University, it gave me structure and it gave me discipline and it showed me how to be aware of every dollar that I was spending. And so I'm telling myself where my money's gonna go rather than me spending it without having a plan. Financial Peace University has given me peace. It has absolutely changed my life. If I look back to where I was 5 years ago and then fast forward to today, there's no way I would have imagined myself here. I love financial peace and knowing that I don't have to rely on credit cards to survive or borrow money from family to make it through for the month. So just the idea of being debt-free is just indescribable, and I just can't wait to be there.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? So you can sign up on the app right now. If you have questions, you can stop by the information centers as you leave and ask somebody there about more information for that. So make sure that you do that. Next week, we're going to talk about the question everybody has, and that is, I'm in on this, but my spouse is not. So we're going to talk about that spouse and make them stand up and give them a milk dud. Okay, so that's going to be great. Make sure that you're with us next week. Can't wait to tell you about that. Also, we do a thing around here once a month called Next Steps, which is a way to introduce you to things going on around here at the church and a chance for me to meet you. If we have never met, you're new around here to Real Life, I'm going to be in the lobby as soon as we're done just to tell you a little bit about how to get connected around here. It'll take you about 5 to 10 minutes. Love for you to stop by. Your kids can hang out in their children's ministry while you do that, but then you do have to pick them up, okay? We're not keeping them overnight. So make sure that you to swing by and say hi. I'd love to meet you. Why don't you stand up and I'll pray us out. God, thank you for being a God that looks on the horizon for us and runs to us and has compassion for us. For many of us, that's such a different concept of who we thought you were. And God, thank you that you care even about the mistakes we've made with your finances. And so, God, we want to be better at that. We want to honor you, and we want to bless other people, and we want to stop worrying and being stressed about this. So would you give us the courage to take that next step and to start immediately? And we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. You guys have a great week. See you next weekend.